Thank you very much, Senator Radley. Senator Biden.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Judge Roberts, welcome. Mrs. Roberts, welcome to you. I might note at the outset, I've never heard of or seen a federal judge who wasn't independent. It's amazing what that life tenure does. Judge, as you know, there's a genuine intellectual debate going on in our country today over whether the Constitution is going to continue to expand the protections of the right to privacy, continue to empower the federal government to protect the powerless. Like the founders, I believe our Constitution is as big and as grand and as great as its people. Our constitutional journey did not stop with women being barred from being lawyers, with 10-year-olds working in coal mines, or black kids forced into different schools than white kids. Just because in the Constitution, nowhere does it mention sex discrimination, child labor, segregation. It doesn't mention it. Our constitutional journey did not stop then, and it must not stop now, Judge. And we'll be faced with equally consequential decisions in the 21st century. Can a microscopic tag be implanted in a person's body to track his every movement? There's actual discussion about that. You will rule on that, mark my words, before your tenure is over.
Okay, so if you forgot your ticket to a soccer game in Argentina, it's not a problem because you can use the microchip that's been embedded under your skin by the team. An Argentinian soccer team planning experimentally to this point to offer supporters a chance to implant a microchip in their skin. Lets them walk right through, like Easy Pass in your car.
It's an Easy Pass.
You just walk right into the stadium.
But the Easy Pass is in your car, not in your wrist.
That's correct.
But see, I'm not really thinking about it in terms of sports as much as I would love to put one in my kids.
Well, Elon Musk's next project isn't a car or a spaceship or a solar panel. The executive's latest startup is called Neuralink, which focuses on the goal of implanting chips into human brains and also connecting brains to computers.
There's a company called Kernel, which are making chips that go into your brain, and right now they're doing it to help patients that have dementia and other things like this, but in the future it could be for us to store, download, or even save memories.
A microscopic tag, a microscopic tag, a microscopic tag implanted in a person's body to track his every movement. A microscopic tag, a microscopic tag, a microscopic tag implanted in a person's body to track his every movement. There's actual discussion about that. You will rule on that, mark my words, before your tenure is over.
The Smart Mark. Throw your other devices away, because the Smart Mark is more than just a phone. It's part of you. Use it as cash. Book your travel. And even shoot video. Distribution points are all over the city. And don't let the lines discourage you. The Rook Unlimited Smart Mark is worth the wait.
I never realized how wonderful technology could make me feel. The Smart Mark has brought order to my life.
And the best part? It's absolutely free. A gift of thanks to our city from Rook Unlimited.
Mark my words, mark my words.
World order is our destiny. Submit to a Smart Mark and join the glorious victory of order over chaos. Or you will be eliminated.
So I already know that some of you are rolling your eyes at the very premise of this video, because this so-called microchip conspiracy has been around for what seems like forever now. Although, if you're in the same place that I was a week ago, you possibly hadn't seen that clip of President-elect Joe Biden promising us all that we will one day have implantable microscopic tags to track our every movement. And he even told us to mark his words about that. So that was kind of new to me. But the microchip conspiracy, yeah, that's been around forever now. But it often gets lumped together with claims that are far more fantastical and far less demonstrable, like Bigfoot or aliens from outer space. You know, as if the idea of implantable microchips is so outrageous. But meanwhile, when you search the word microchip on the internet, you'll get met with a vast array of articles and literature going back at least 20 years, you know. And as is the case when searching pretty much any controversial topic, most of these results are limited to articles and content from the most popular and Big Brother approved media outlets, you know, and they just write about it like it's no big deal. And these articles almost always do two things. First, they explain the numerous and practical benefits that'll be available to us when we finally accept these microchips into our society as a promoted social norm. And yes, that actually is the type of language that's been used by the press regarding this topic over the last 20 years or so. And the idea of microchipping society is usually treated with a sense of inevitability rather than just a possibility. And after singing the praises of all the positive impacts these microchips will have on society, the second thing that most of these articles will do is to address that there's a lot of Christians and conspiracy theorists who think that this coming microchip craze is a bad thing, you know, and of course why such views are misguided or silly. You know, and of course no credit is given to the fact that these conspiracy theorists were right, you know, and that they're the same people who were warning the world about these things years ago, back when the media was only mocking and ridiculing and dismissing the claims that such a thing as implantable microchips could ever even exist. And then somewhere along the way, they just literally flipped the script, and suddenly it went from there is no microchip agenda to of course people will be microchipped in the future, and that's a great thing that we should all be excited about. You know, and now as of today, searching the term microchipped will yield a bunch of the aforementioned articles that practically serve as promotional advertisements for microchipping, as well as a plethora of hit pieces against any articles or media like this very video, which establishes a connection between that word that starts with a V that I'm not allowed to talk about and microchips. And they all claim to, quote, debunk this, quote, theory without making any mention of some of the things that I'm about to show you. And look, for my channel on YouTube, I hope that the censors on that platform will recognize my freedom of thought here and observe my right to share my opinion. And for everyone else, please understand that this is just my opinion, and if my research happens to reveal something controversial, well then I guess that's just how it goes. But I'm not the authority on current events, and my views should be regarded as just that, you know, views. The views of a concerned citizen who embraces his freedom to speak. And besides, it's not like anybody has anything to worry about here. I mean, Melinda Gates herself insists that this whole microchipping thing isn't even possible.
I know my husband is not vaccinating people and putting a microchip in their arm because that technology doesn't even exist, and he's never uttered the words out of his mouth, so...
Okay, now, I don't want to throw any stones with a big old plank sticking out of my own eye, but this is either a really stupid thing to say or it's just a blatant lie. And I mean, really, it's both. I mean, I think the last time I heard a lie of this magnitude was probably back in June of 2020, when her husband, Bill, said,
"I've never been involved with any sort of microchip type thing."
Okay, Bill, well, if that's true, then can you explain to us why in 2012 your foundation awarded $1.5 million to a company called Microchips Biotech for the purpose of developing birth control microchips? That's right, birth control microchips. And according to the MIT Technology Review, it was in 2012 that Mr. Gates and company paid a visit to the MIT lab of Robert Langer. And this name's going to come up a little bit later. But they met with Mr. Langer in his MIT lab to discuss the possibility of creating a microchip that could be used to control a woman's fertility. So Gates' plan involved the development of a contraceptive microchip, which could be implanted into a woman's body and control her fertility wirelessly and remotely with the flip of a switch. And amazingly, this chip has been designed to work and to remain operational for about a 16-year period, which is long enough to cover the prime years of fertility in a woman. And let's not underestimate the implications of this contraceptive chip being remote controlled. I mean, that means that it could be controlled by anybody with access to the switch, you know, whether that's the woman herself or her primary physician, or even a tyrannical government that's invested in a campaign to, quote, stabilize the population.
The United Nations can and should play an essential role in helping the world find a satisfactory way of stabilizing world population.
We've got to stabilize the population. When I was born, there were
so what's wrong with the population? I mean,
with too many people.
But all conspiracy theories aside, Bill said that he has never been involved with any microchip type thing. And yet, I don't know, but to me this kind of seems like a microchip type thing. I mean, the company itself is literally called Microchips Biotech. And as you can see right here, these guys specialize in implantable microchips. And this is a post-edit, but now that I'm gathering these sources and screenshots, I have learned that Microchips Biotech was recently acquired by a larger company called Dare Bioscience. And by recent, I mean that this acquisition happened about a year ago, at the very end of 2019. And so for those of you that want to dig deeper, keep this in mind. But as I was saying, you can see right here how this company exists for the sole purpose of developing implantable microchips. But anyways, this whole birth control microchip thing, it was Bill's idea, it was developed with Bill's money, and then in 2014, as you can see right here, the Gates Foundation gave an additional $20.5 million grant to Microchips Biotech. And then most recently, in September of 2020, the Gates Foundation granted yet another $1 million to this very microchip-like thing. But not only does Bill deny association with any microchip-like thing, but he also insists that there is no connection between these vaccines and any tracking type thing.
To be clear, do you want a vaccine so that you can implant microchips into people?
No, there's no connection between any of these vaccines and any tracking type thing at all. I don't know where that came from.
So it's pretty funny to say. It kind of reminds me of Cushy Baby. It's a project going on in India that involves monitoring the immunization record of children via a microchip necklace. And this is something that we discussed in the ID 2020 portion of this documentary. So I'm not going to get into the whole thing again, but please watch part 1 of this series if you don't know what we're talking about here. But the point is that the Gates Foundation has been financially supporting Cushy Baby as well since at least 2015. So it appears that the Gates are actually very involved in both microchip type things and tracking type things. But we're just getting started here. And there is still a giant gap between these technologies that I'm describing and the biblical mark of the beast. So before we go on, let me clarify that I am not a prophet or even a very qualified theologian. This did not come to me in a vision from God, and I could be wrong. But let me also say that these biblical end-time prophecies are not taboo topics, nor are they intended to remain mysterious. For when these end times do approach, these signs will no longer be prophecies, but signs, signs of the times. They're signs that are intended to alert the children of the Lord that the return of Christ is imminent. I mean, just look to Matthew chapter 24, when Jesus was teaching his disciples on the Mount of Olives, and his disciples were asking him about the signs of Christ's return and about the end of the world. And Jesus goes on to list a bunch of the signs, some of which include the arrival of false Christs and false prophets who will deceive many, in giant wars and rumors of wars and pestilences and famines and earthquakes and all the rest of it. And then in verse 32, he instructs his disciples to consider the fig tree. And when his branch is yet tender and putteth forth leaves, ye know that the summer is nigh. So likewise, when ye see these things, know that it is near, even at the doors, is what Jesus said. And so he's saying that in the same way that a fig tree will begin to blossom before summer arrives, so these signs will occur before Christ's return. And he speaks instructively, teaching a future generation that when mankind finally begins seeing these things start to occur, that they will know that the time is at hand. And there's no doubt in my mind that many of these signs are now playing out around us, but that's a kind of complex topic for another video. But my point here is that I do believe we are supposed to think about these things, and even compare and contrast these prophecies with our surroundings to determine the nearness of Christ's return. Because what was prophecy to earlier generations will eventually become pertinent instructions to those who will be around as this stuff starts to unfold. And perhaps we're starting to see some of these things unfold right now. And as we investigate the potential for these microchips to be somehow connected to the impending mark of the beast, you will see that similar language is used regarding these prophecies as well. I mean, look here in Revelation chapter 13 and verses 16 through 18. But you should read through this chapter yourself to better understand the fuller context of what's going on here with the establishment of the beast system under the rule of the Antichrist and all this other stuff that's occurring. But it's in verse 16 where we learn about the mark.
And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, and that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666.
And so verse 18 does not only tell us about the infamous number 666, but it also says, let he who hath understanding count the number of the beast. It says there is wisdom. So this isn't just some random factoid. This is an imperative instruction for he who has understanding. And I'm not saying that I'm the guy who has great understanding or that I cracked the code or something. I'm just pointing out that this is something to be understood, something tangible. It's not a mystifying or cryptic riddle. It's something to be understood. And in a way, we are actually going to count that number here shortly. But first, let's get back to verse 16. And he causeth all, both small and great, to receive a mark in their right hand and in their forehead. So this is a point of contention for a lot of Christians when it comes to the microchip thing. Many insist that the mark of the beast cannot be a microchip because it is defined as a mark, as an invisible mark, and that it'll serve as a visual emblem or tattoo, like a badge of compliance, which is obviously not consistent with a tiny little microchip implant. But that brings us to our next topic, which is yet another creepy Gates-funded technology with no connection between vaccines and any tracking type thing. And this one's called the quantum dot tattoo. And let's start in March of 2020. Shortly after Mr. Gates stepped down from his role at Microsoft, he held an AMA on Reddit. And AMA stands for Ask Me Anything, where he could kind of interact with the public and answer questions. And about halfway through his AMA, he was asked, quote, what changes are we going to have to make to how businesses operate to maintain our economy while providing social distancing? To which Bill replied, quote, eventually, we will have some digital certificates to show who has recovered or been tested recently, or when we have a who has received it. And so how do you like that? A digital certificate that proves whether or not you have received the shot. So a certificate. So now we're really starting to approximate this idea of a visual mark. And this digital certificate may look something like this. It's the quantum dot tattoo, and it's another gift from the Gates Foundation. And the technical term for this thing is the Human Implantable Quantum Dot Microneedle Delivery System. So that's kind of a mouthful. But it's a tattoo that could be imprinted into the hand, under the skin, and could be scanned like a barcode by a smartphone or a sensor to reveal both our unique identification mark and our immunization records. And this is where I got to mention that anybody that knows anything about Nazi Germany, or what's going on in China right now with surveillance, you can kind of see where this is going. And so you can see the ink on the tips of these so-called microneedles. And the idea is that as this device is forced into your skin, you will be tagged with an identification mark while simultaneously being and the ink on the tips of these needles will leave this luminescent ink pattern under the surface of your skin. And when scanned, this mark will actually glow and it'll reveal information about you. And this is achieved through the use of an interesting luminescent enzyme that is generically titled, get this, luciferase. And it's probably not only the Christians that are seeing that word Lucifer in there. And Lucifer means light bearer, which I suppose fits the description. But it also happens to fit the mark of the beast prophecies. So I don't know. I thought it was worth mentioning in context to this topic here. Definitely an interesting word to pop up on this particular ingredient list. And so for a group that claims that it would be impossible to use microchips to track people and that they have no interest in these things, well, they sure do seem to have a lot of ties to microchips and tracking people and doing these kinds of things. And remember, the Gates Foundation is not the only group or entity that's spending millions of dollars to develop these new implantable devices which aim to connect a human being to this ever-growing Internet of Things that's developing around us. Because trust me, there's a number of billionaires with a dog in this fight, concerning this burgeoning microchip market that is fast approaching. I mean, from Elon Musk's Neuralink to companies like Verichip or Kernel, this thing is becoming big business. But the reason that I've used the Gates Foundation as the focal point for this documentary series is because unlike the other players in this arena, Bill chooses to deny his role in this particular technology. And he continues to claim that his organization has never been involved in any microchip type thing, as he so eloquently puts it. And it's because Gates doesn't want to be known as the microchip guy. Gates is supposed to be known as the computer guy who turned into the guy, right? And then in classic PSYOP form, the internet is awash with these bad conspiracy theories and deliberate misinformation and disinformation, making it really difficult to locate reliable evidence regarding this connection. And then somewhere along the way, the media grabbed hold of this sourceless claim that apparently went viral, which stated that Bill Gates intended to use this plandemic shot as a ploy to inject microchips into everybody to track their every movement. So hey, maybe Joe Biden started it. You get it from that clip at the beginning? And anyways, this claim has sort of served as a straw man to discredit the claims of, people like me who actually do source these claims, so that by the time you hear this information that I'm presenting, the media has already trained you to just, laugh it off. But it's really not a joke. It's actually a really well-documented topic. And it's also not a conspiracy theory. You guys, this is happening right now. It's happening right outside our doors. I mean, the United States government doesn't seem to think it's a joke, because DARPA, which is an agency within the U.S. Department of Defense, has recently introduced something they're calling an injectable biochip, which reportedly is able to change human DNA and could be used to detect a COVID-19 84 infection, according at least to this Newsmax article, among others. And it says the nanochip can also be used to deploy an experimental and that it could be available by next year, which is this year. So there you have it, a real-life microchip produced by the government to be implanted into your body to keep you safe. And perhaps the technology behind this DARPA biochip might seem a little familiar to you, because it's a lot like that contraceptive chip produced by Microchips Biotech that we spoke about earlier. And so you should remember this man. This is Robert Langer. And Robert Langer is the guy that assisted Bill Gates in the production of the contraceptive chip. But what I didn't tell you before is that Robert Langer is also a co-founder of, get this, Moderna. And to bring things full circle, it happens to be the Moderna that is reported to be inside these DARPA, or aka government-funded microchips. So how do you like that for a plot twist? I mean, Tom Clancy couldn't write a better script than this. And okay, so they're chipping us, and so the conspiracy theories were true. But that doesn't necessarily mean that these chips are the biblical mark of the beast. Well, I guess that first we should define what this beast is, right? And as you may suspect, there's a lot of differing opinions about the beasts of Revelation. But in chapter 13, the Bible clearly describes the beast as a worldwide political, military, and economic system that reigns over humanity and dictates everybody's lives. Because this is the system which ushers in the rise of the Antichrist. And the mark of the beast is a mark of acceptance or allegiance and conformity with this system and with the Antichrist. And in order to buy or sell anything, you will be required to take this mark, and to pay taxes and therefore to own land or participate in society even. And you might even be beheaded or killed, as in chapter 20, verse 4. And another thing about the beast is that the Bible says that man will worship the beast. And I'm not a biblical scholar and I don't speak Hebrew or Greek, but when I look up the definition for the word worship, the dictionary says that worship is a feeling or expression of reverence and adoration for a deity and honoring that deity with religious rites. And so I'm sorry, but even according to this secular definition, I see a world that worships the world. Because I kind of view the beast system as the end of the road that we're currently driving down. Meaning we can see it being built gradually around us. We won't just wake up one morning and suddenly in a different world. We've actually been getting closer all along. And I think that worshiping the beast is just a way to describe the final stages of biblical worldliness, of man loving the world more than man loves God or even his fellow man. Because when you think about it, God has always been trying to call us out of this world, because this world is not our home. I mean, it's not my home at least, because I'm telling you that everybody is worshiping something. And the first commandment is to have no other gods before our Creator. He's jealous for our love and he hates to see us go against his good will for our lives and to cling to the sins of this world instead. And God has been pleading with us to stop worshiping, aka devoting our purpose and adoration towards this world. I mean, check some of these verses out. From 1 John chapter 2, love not the world, neither the things that are in the world. If any man love the world, the love of the Father is not in him. For all that is in the world, the lust of the flesh and the lust of the eyes and the pride of life, is not of the Father, but is of the world. And the world passeth away, and the lust thereof, but he that doeth the will of God abideth forever. And then Romans chapter 12 verse 2 says, and be not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. Colossians 3:2, set your affection on things above, not on things on the earth. Or how about James 4:4, ye adulterers and ye adulteresses, know ye not that friendship with the world is enmity with God? And whosoever therefore will be a friend of the world is an enemy of God. I mean, listen to how harsh this language is against worldliness, man. John 15 verse 19 says, if we were of the world would love his own. But because ye are not of the world, but I have chosen you out of the world, therefore the world hateth you. And that's just a couple of verses, you know. But the point is that when you love the world, and when you're conformed to the world, and when you're setting your affection on the things of this world, that's worship. That's worship. And I'm not saying that the time is now, but I think that we need to start thinking about and considering these things in realistic and tangible terms that relate to our, current situation. Because I think a lot of Christians will likely feel blindsided when this stuff finally goes down, just for simple failure to apply the text. Because if it happened today, I think most people would be found guilty of worshiping their comforts and sins and material indulgences of the world. And meanwhile, you have these world-famous CEOs of these highly influential tech companies who are running around, and racing for the ability to alter our bodies with devices that could serve to connect us to the internet or the virtual world, in which everything is subject to the will of the world's programmers. And you will be living in this augmented version of reality that's being altered and filtered and censored in real time, like we talked about in part 2 of this video. And if you don't believe me about the link between this coming chip and virtual reality, well then just take it from this more professional seeming person.
And I think the second thing is, let's look 8 to 10 years from now and consider a space where we can use chips in our bodies to move augmented reality around ourselves, to actually use it within the workplace, through gestures, through our hands, through our whole bodies, without having to wear the wearables of today, the glasses of today. And maybe that's...
And so to accept one of these things into your body, or AKA your temple, and to allow these companies to artificially augment your perception of reality, and to accept this knowingly, I can see how this could easily be interpreted as a mark of commitment to the beast system, or a mark of allegiance to a worldly and godless system. And so now that we've covered the topics of digital identity and virtual reality and how all these things kind of fit under the umbrella of this coming microchip revolution, we've finally arrived at the last example of creepy technology from Mr. Gates' portfolio. And it's not actually a product, at least not yet. It's merely a patent application that was officially filed by Microsoft shortly before Bill's departure. And the technology that's described in this patent, it seems more like an excerpt from the book of Revelation than it does a viable product that could soon be available for use. But alas, here we are, and this is real. So what you're looking at here is the patent application for a new product being developed by Microsoft, titled Cryptocurrency System Using Body Activity Data. And your eyes are not tricking you here. The publication number is WO 2020-060606.
Here is wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666.
And now it just so happens that for unrelated reasons, I have recently learned a lot about patent law and intellectual property, as well as patent filing procedures. And I can tell you that this publication number is assigned by the USPTO office at the initial time of publishing. The WO here stands for World Intellectual Property Organization, and it's short for WIPO. 2020 stands for the year that it was published. And now the 060606, which could also be mathematically phrased as 666, well, that's anybody's guess. I mean, I would assert that he who hath understanding should note this particular number, because look at what it's attached to here. Because based on the description and title alone of this product, we're looking at the first stage of what could become a new economic system by which money is directly attached to the individual, and the individual is directly attached to the larger system. And then, as if our lockdown hadn't dismantled our cash-based economy enough, then they hit us with the alleged coin shortage, and all the major companies began promoting pay-on-your-phone apps and other clever options to discourage cash and to encourage credit. And then at this point, you're just buying things with membership points and reward vouchers. And so if you even have as much spiritual discernment as a jellyfish, you could probably make the connection between the advent of this cryptocurrency and the coming mark, which will enable mankind to spend and receive money directly to their identity, without ever touching a coin or opening a wallet. And as this documentary series has hopefully sufficiently demonstrated, there's only one contender for this future utilization of these interpersonal technologies, and it's a chip. It could be in your hand, it could be in your brain. Eventually people will probably have both. Because as the remaining pieces of our lives and history are systematically digitized and then stored into this worldwide web, or perhaps this worldwide spider web, a permanent connection to this online world will eventually become a necessity, and then it will become a requirement. So let's look at this together. So the description reads as follows. Human body activity associated with a task provided to a user may be used in a mining process of a cryptocurrency system. A server may provide a task to a device of a user which is communicatively coupled to the server. A sensor communicatively coupled to or comprised in the device of the user may sense body activity of the user. Body activity data may be generated based on the sensed body activity of the user. The cryptocurrency system that's communicatively coupled to the device of the user may verify if the body activity data satisfies one or more conditions set by the cryptocurrency system, and award cryptocurrency to the user whose body activity data is verified. So patent language can be pretty difficult. It's intentionally ambiguous for the purpose of covering a broad scope of ideas and options and potential variations that the inventor may choose to add later on in the development process. But as you pick through this description, it's saying that this will be a system that financially rewards the user for completing unspecified tasks. And if you read through this entire filing, which is pretty big, it does include some examples of these tasks, which include watching an advertisement or listening to a song in full or reading a news article or possibly uploading content to a website. Because I guess in a future where AI computers and robots do the majority of the work, what else are we supposed to do to make a buck, other than sit around being distracted by the media all day? And something tells me that videos like this one would not provide that same monetary incentive. And so people would be rewarded for watching and hearing and speaking and doing the right thing, and consuming specific content. And what is the right thing according to a cryptocurrency mining system? Well, it's whatever pays out. And what pays out in media? Well, whatever's corporate funded. And so in the end, your life becomes dominated by a necessity to consume more and more worldly and sinful content while scoring points towards your social credit score. And I'm not necessarily saying that this describes worshiping the beast, but it certainly fits my understanding at least. But finally, does this patent have anything to do with a microchip or a mark of some kind? Well, to be honest, I'm not really sure. No, it doesn't mention the word microchip or tag or biochip or anything like that. But it uses something that is only listed with the generic name sensor. And despite the fact that Snopes and other fraudulent fact-checking sites continue to dismiss this possibility, claiming that the patent clearly lists things like smartphones and computers and tablets as examples for the user device. And yeah, you'll need some kind of device with an interface to interact with the system to observe the data from the sensor, but that's the thing. What is the sensor? Let's look at the diagram. Item 130 is the user device, and the user device connects to the cloud network, which connects to the cryptocurrency system here on the right. And then number 110 on the left here represents the task which has been assigned to the user. And the sensor down here is what connects the user to the user device. But as I said before, the patent is cunningly vague in its description of the sensor. So we'll find the sensor over here on the description page and see what it says. Sensor may be a separate component from user device and be operably and communicatively connected to user device. Alternatively, sensor may be included and integrated in user device. For example, user device may be a wearable device having sensor 140 therein. The sensor 140 may transmit information or data to user device. Sensor may include, for example, but not limited to, functional magnetic resonance imaging, scanners or sensors, EEG sensors, near-infrared spectroscopy sensors, heart rate monitors, thermal sensors, optical sensors, radio frequency sensors, ultrasonic sensors, cameras, or any other sensor or scanner that can measure or sense body activity or scan a human body. For example, the fMRI may measure body activity by detecting changes associated with blood flow. The fMRI may use a magnetic field and radio waves to create detailed images of the body, like blood flow in the brain to detect areas of activity. And it goes on. But as you can see, this sensor instrument is pretty intimately attached to the human. So this leaves the door wide open for how this sensor part will actually be implemented. It says it could be attached to a wearable device, or it could be external from the user device. But if it's not a microchip, is it even possible for this thing to not eventually be integrated into a microchip? It's designed to measure every bit of activity from your body. Your blood flow, your heart rate, your muscle tension, concentration level. Come on. And it also interacts with your brain and even measures your thoughts. Look what it says down here. It says examples of body radiation emitted from human body may include radiant heat of the body, pulse rate, or brainwave. Brainwave may comprise, for example, but not limited to, gamma waves, involved in learning or memory tasks, beta waves, involved in logical thinking and or conscious thought, alpha waves, which may be related to subconscious thoughts, theta waves, which may be related to thoughts involving deep and raw emotions, and delta waves, which may be involved in sleep or deep relaxation. So this thing is literally reading your mind. It's measuring your brain activity. And seemingly it's designed to distinguish between raw emotions, like your deepest fears, or greatest regrets, or anxieties, or desires. And I don't know, this thing is getting a little too personal for me. And I think it goes without saying that this thing is also going to be tracking your GPS location as well. But anyways, despite my best research, I can't figure out exactly what this sensor is. However, in summary, if I was a more cynical person, I would say that this all sounds like a plan to enslave humanity, you know? I mean, if we were to go through with this idea, how long would it take before citizens are not only rewarded for conducting encouraged behaviors, but also penalized for discouraged behaviors? I mean, this is crazy, guys. I don't know. It requires more research. And if there was ever something that I'd encourage you to research yourself, it might be this patent. I mean, I've only discussed a small portion of what you'll find in there, and it is absolutely nuts. But I gotta end this video soon because my brain is really starting to hurt over here, to be honest. And so I think that we've covered enough for now, although in reality we've just scratched the surface of what's really going on behind this particular agenda. And frankly, if you're still not concerned about the intentions behind these emerging microchip technologies, even after considering all this information that I just presented, then I suspect you probably never will. Because you might be waiting for the media or the so-called experts to confirm or deny the stuff that I'm saying, and only then will you believe it. Well, that day is not coming, my friend. Because if what I'm saying is true, then the media is largely complicit in all of this. So you're going to get as much honesty from them as a judge gets from a lawyer. You know, do not expect transparency on this topic. I guess you just got to figure this one out for yourself. But if you ever find yourself doubting or questioning if you believe what you're hearing from these so-called experts, just remember this.
That technology doesn't even exist, and he's never uttered the words out of his mouth, so